Hi, good morning. My name is Reinaldo Medina. Today is June 21st, 2025, and it's 8 a.m. U.S. Central Time. This is a recording that I'm making part of the series Bring Gustravo to Justice, Bring Gustravo to the U.S. And in this instance, I want to talk about a cluster of individuals that I call the Broussard, Castillo, Suarez, Sanchez, William Lane, Maria cluster. Okay. And this is a cluster of individuals that basically targeted a pre-existing spinal injury that I have to harm me, to make it impossible for me to compete in business with Travis Kalanick and Elon Musk and those guys, Jeremy. So that's how this started, right? So Dr. Broussard, Marjorie Broussard, which is the first person in the cluster, she's an employee, a doctor. I cannot really go to her anymore, but she was my primary care doctor for many years. And the reason that I got into her practice was because my former partner basically drove me to her, right? Like my former partner made very strong recommendations about this particular Venezuelan doctor. She's Venezuelan. And my former partner made very strong recommendations for me to go to this particular doctor. This was maybe 2015, right? So she was my primary care doctor for 10 years, imagine that. And during that time, she did a lot of things to me personally to harm me. And I know this is a serious accusation. And I'm recording this video and I challenge Dr. Broussard and Kelsey Siebel to sue me for defamation or whatever they want. So anyhow, at some point, this network and Jessean Cabello and those people bought the entire network, Kelsey Siebel, for $2 billion. Like Dr. Broussard was involved in this even before the network was acquired. The medical group, Kelsey Siebel, was acquired by the network officially. So that's the cluster, right? So that's how I frame the cluster. Yeah, let me start by how I got into the practice, because it's kind of, and I don't know, like this could be, I'll make another video about that, sorry. I'll cut this part. Dr. Broussard, right? So the first thing that they did was that at some point, I don't know, maybe 2015, 2016, somewhere around there, and I'll post the links to the documentation of these exams and everything. But Dr. Broussard ordered a CT scan, full body, because I expressed that I was feeling a little bit of anxiety in my chest. I said when I talked to her that it wasn't even a physical sensation, it was more like an emotion. And she ordered for that a CT scan. Imagine that. Of course, I didn't understand any of this. I came to understand what really happened when I got the GEO index from Elon Musk in September 11, 2024. That's when I could see the truth. Back then, I didn't really put it together. But so the reason why they did that, I believe, was to get a mapping of my spine to really understand exactly where was the injury, like with millimetric precision. And then what they did is when I bought some chairs, work chairs on Amazon, and my chairs at Google as well, they installed or they modified the chairs with some sort of, it's a torture device. That's the best way I can describe it. I have one of these chairs in my possession. It's a device that basically applies pressure in the exact point where I have the injury. And like you could say, it's just a bad chair, or it's a chair that doesn't work for you. It doesn't mean, but the precision of this, like the pressure and the amount of pressure it applies is huge. And the precision where it's applying that pressure that falls exactly into this cannot be random, right? The Tesla vehicle that I bought also has the same property. If I sit on that seat of that car for 3 days, like if I drive the car 3 days in a row, I basically lose the ability to walk. So I suspect the car has the same device installed in the driver's seat. So that was the first thing that they did, right? Now, the reason why Antero, Gustravo Sanchez, and his father, Antero Sanchez, come into this cluster is because that injury was really discovered in 2001 by PDVSA is a company, a Venezuelan company controlled by the Venezuelan government. And I used to work for that company back in 2001, right? More than 20 years ago. When I was going to join the company, they did a pre-employment medical exam, and they discovered that I had an injury in my spine. And like that I didn't get an operation or anything, and I was employed by the company. Antero Sanchez was the director of the medical department of the company back then in 2001. And I know him personally because he was the boss of my father. My father was also a doctor in the company. So anyhow, fast forward to 2015, right? And they start with this harassment campaign and harming me physically so I could not compete, because if I cannot walk, how can I write code? How can I work? And so what they did is that they got the medical, and this, I didn't know this, an informant told me this, that they got my medical records from Venezuela, from 2001, from Antero Sanchez. Antero Sanchez being the father of Antero Sanchez Jr. And Antero Sanchez Jr. used to help me on my startups because he's a software developer. I used to hire him by the hour. I paid him by the hour. But he's also an agent, like his house in London, Ontario is marked in the inn, right? And his father provided the medical records so Diosdado Cabello and the Venezuelan intelligence could know where to hit me, where it would hurt the most in my injury, in my spine. So anyhow, that's why Dr. Broussard in 2015 ordered that CT scan to have the chairs, so then Diosdado Cabello and Vladimir Padrino Lopez and those people could have the chairs manufactured to harm my injury, right? To put pressure on my injury. Now we get to Penelope. The reason Penelope is part of this cluster is because Penelope and Dirlay Castillo, when things started escalating, that I realized that they were following me, and this is documented in a video that I'm going to post in the description of this video, how I figured out that they were following me and they were harassing me, right? Basically, I didn't know any of this until last year, until 2023. But anyhow, when that happened, Dirlay was the handler of Penelope. And they had this dynamic that after I became aware, what I did was I started changing my habits, my tactics to avoid things like avoid interception by their agents, for example. So what the dynamic that they had was that when I changed my tactics, whenever I did something new, Dirlay Castillo would create a meeting in person with Penelope Suarez with some excuse, and then they would coordinate, and she would pass the information to Penelope of whatever Diosdado Cabello and Lesevin and all those people decided that they were going to do to counter what I was doing. So that's why Dirlay Castillo is in this cluster, because she was, I believe, the person that set this off that I'm going to describe next, okay? So after Dirlay met with Penelope, Penelope comes to me and says, with this idea, we've been running in this park for a long time, right? Why don't we switch parks? And she proposed this other park that I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you next this park. Okay, she proposed running in this park, okay? And the park is big. This is a photo that I took of where this incident that I'm going to describe happened. We were running on that park, and this park has like all these houses in this park and the border are marking the geo index of Elon Musk. And even you can see this blue dot that it's in the screen is very important. I'm going to tell you why in a second. But I want you to know that the house next door has the black trampoline antenna, that it's a notable item in the important nodes in this mesh network that they have. Right? There's no doubt that this is the network, like this neighborhood is controlled by the network. So what happened was, after we've been running there for a few weeks, I had an inexplicable fall. Like I was running with her, and that day I remember, like she told me where to run. We were running on, it's a very small or narrow sidewalk next to the border of houses. And I remember that Penelope told me, you take the right side and I will run on the left. So she ordered me to run on the right side of the, how do you say that, of the sidewalk, while she was running on the left side next to me. But she positioned me on the right on purpose. And I remember that because when she said it, she said, it's just so you don't take too much sun, because, you know, the sun was shining in a way that if I was running on the right, I would get the shadow from the fence. That line that you see here, it's a tall fence of maybe, I don't know, 12 feet tall or something like that, or maybe 10 feet tall. So she rationalized it as she was protecting me from the sun because it was very strong. And I had a rash in one of my eyes because something that Mansur gave me. That's another story. But I was running on, so she put me on the right side. And then as I'm running, when I'm exactly at this blue point that is marked here, I fell. I flew, I don't know, maybe 10 feet ahead. and I landed. It was a horrible fall. I don't know how I didn't kill myself on that. I was basically unharmed from the fall at that moment. I had a few scratches and I was bleeding, but nothing like to go to the emergency room. But what happened was that 3 days or 4 days after, I started developing a very strong pain in my back. I think they foresaw that having that spinal injury, a fall of that dimension would trigger a compression of the nerve, and that would render me either unable to walk or would prompt me to seek medical attention, which would open an opportunity for them to do something, right? Which is what happened. But anyhow, in that place where I fell, I have a picture here. There was a cable that was, look, it was positioned in a way that, like, it was intentional. Like, they set a trap, basically, to make me fall. And this point, and this is the most important item, this point where this cable is located is marked with a precision hit-to-kill ratio, hit-to-kill precision, sorry, in Elon Musk's GeoIndex, which is the tool they use to coordinate everything, right? This geo database that they have. Put that in perspective. The point where the cable that caused the fall is marked in the index with a hit-to-kill precision. And Penelope, who is an agent because her house is marked in the index and many other reasons, positioned me on the side of the sidewalk where I would run into this cable. Then I fell and I had to seek medical attention, which is what happened at the end. So that's why Dirlay Castillo and Penelope Suarez are part of this cluster. And then we arrived to Dr. William E. Lane, right? So this is a very young doctor. When I looked at him, when I was about to enter the operation room, because fast forward a few weeks, the pain was so big, so intense, that I had to seek medical attention. And of course, like, they denied. The first thing that happened was that Dr. Broussard told me that I was in severe pain, and I told her, I was crying when I told her this from the pain. And her response was that the insurance will not approve anything if I did not go to physiotherapy first. That was what she said. And she ordered physiotherapy. And I went to physiotherapy. I could still walk at that point. I went to physiotherapy, and then the exercises that they made me do in physiotherapy made the injury worse, made the pain worse, to the point that I lost the ability to walk completely. I could not walk. I was bedridden. And I was, I don't know, 42 years old, 43 years old. And at this point, the facility where the physiotherapy took place is marked in Elon Musk GeoIndex as well. At this point, it's clear to me that what Dr. Broussard did of denying, first, pain management, right, for a person that is severely in pain, that has to be a crime. And secondly, purposely recommending or prescribing a therapy that would make the injury worse. This has to be criminal. But anyhow, at some point during this process, and this is actually before William Lane, I was in such severe pain that I told Penelope Suarez how I was feeling, and she recommended Mrs. Maria. Okay, this I have very little data because Mrs. Maria is a very elusive character. I've only got the name Maria. They never told me the last name, nor gave me the phone number. Once I asked Penelope for the phone number, she did not give it to me. She changed the subject and she did not give it to me. But so Mrs. Maria supposedly was a physiotherapy from El Salvador or Guatemala or something like that. And she was here in the US, and that is what the story that they told me. She's been here for 20 years, and she would do miracles. Like, she would relieve the pain of people that, doctors could not relieve the pain, like she would do it. And then Penelope would take me to this facility. It was like a small, I would describe it as a massage room, like a therapy room, right, for massages. And then Mrs. Maria would come to that place. It wasn't her place of business. Like, she was supposedly borrowing it from another person. But she would come to this place. She would be allowed to work in there on my pain. And she would give me massages to try to help me. I have to tell you, those massages were like the most painful, not the most painful. I think I've been through more pain than that, but it was one of the most painful experiences of my life. I literally, I would cry, not cry, but like my eyes would tear up from the pain. And then Mrs. Maria told me that that was normal, that I would experience that pain at that moment, but then I would get better. I would be able to walk normally again. And because of that, I resisted. And these were like sessions of an hour and a half, torture sessions, basically. I don't think there's any other way to put what that was. And of course, they didn't help me. They made the injury worse to a point where I wasn't able to walk. When I reached that point, and I kept making these appointments, trying to get pain management, basically, or trying to get an epidural injection or something. And my appointments would either be canceled or nobody would give me an appointment in this area. Of course, I didn't understand at that point because I did not have the index. But once I had the index, I understand, like they control all the medical facilities in this area because for operational reasons, like they can't risk that an agent goes to a doctor that is not an agent of the network because he could talk about personal things and he could tip off the non-network doctor and that doctor could report them to the FBI. But they have to control all the doctors. For the same reason, they have to control all the lawyers and all the psychiatrists and those sensitive and all the auto repair shops and all the AC repairmen, like those sensitive professions, they have to control. So anyhow, at some point, and this is also telling my partner, my former partner, I asked her multiple times to find me an appointment with a neurosurgeon or with a pain management clinic. And she supposedly made the calls, but nobody would give me an appointment. Like she was helpless. Like she couldn't help me. So at some point, I said, I have to take care of this myself. And I went to it. I managed to find one appointment. I think what I did was to change my last name. I think that's what I did. So instead of I have two last names because I'm Hispanic. So I have Aguiar Marcano is my second last name. So when I register online for an appointment, I use Marcano, right? And that way I was able to get an appointment. Now, I go to this clinic, and when the doctor sees me, he starts giving me the same, you have to go to physiotherapy first, the same line that Dr. Broussard was giving me. And I started crying, literally, and it was not an act. And I was leaving, I understood that nobody would help me. And I was leaving the office and I was leaving, my legs gave up, I couldn't walk anymore and I fell to the floor. I was using crutches at that time. And I fell to the floor, and as I fell, the doctor held me. And when he held me, he saw me, I was crying. And I think he took pity on me. Like he gave me the prescription for the epidural injection. But I had to go through all that to get basic medical care that everybody else has for granted. Just because Diosdado Cabello didn't want me to be able to walk. After that happened, then comes Dr. William Lane. He is the one who administered the epidural injection twice in two different years. For now, for strategic reasons, I'm not going to say the ammunition that I have on him, but I have a lot of ammunition. And he's an important player and carries probably the most liability because he directly performed a procedure on me, right? Let's call it that way. He's key on bringing liability to Diosdado Cabello. With that, I think that closes the arc, but of this Broussard, Castillo, Suarez, Sanchez, William Lane, Maria cluster. But if somebody asks me, who do you think in this group of people bears the more, and I'm not a lawyer, like I'm in no place to give a legal opinion, but I would think it would be Dr. Broussard, the person that carries the more legal liability for Diosdado Cabello. Because for many reasons. So she is the one that did the order, the CT scan 10 years ago that allowed this to progress to the point where I was not able to walk. Like she was like the precursor of all this. And Antero Sanchez gave them the medical records from 2001. He didn't directly do anything to me, right? He just gave information. But Dr. Broussard, actually, by ordering the CT scan and giving them to them, opened the door for everything else that happened with this group of people or coming from this group of people. So I think she's the one that carries the most liability. Also, she's a licensed professional in the medical profession, right? So she took an oath. She has a legal duty to protect the patients, not to harm them. And she violated that oath and those principles on purpose for financial gain. Also, her house is marked in the index. I have photos of a surveillance car parked Moscow style in front of her house with surveillance cameras installed. Like it's crazy. Like I have so much evidence against Dr. Broussard that I think it would be like, what do they call that in English? A slam dunk. It would be like a slam dunk. And her house is protected by a huge buffer zone. is in a dead end street. Like, she has all the check marks of an important agent. Of course, because the liability is high, they have to protect her, right? Not to protect Dr. Broussard, it's to protect the Cabello, because they know that she carries liability for him. So they have to make sure that they know the minute the FBI comes by. So that's why they take all those measures. And so I think that she probably is the one that carries the most liability. And then after her, probably Dr. William Lane. And notably, and this, I cannot stress this enough, Dr. Broussard works for Kelsey Civil, which is a network that is at this point controlled by United Healthcare, which is controlled by this network. It's all by the Iranians. And this is tied to CVS. United Healthcare also has ties to CVS pharmacies, right? Where they also harm me with other things. So I think this cluster is a nuclear weapon as well. I really hope that authorities can do something with this information. Thank you so much, and until the next one.